My dad, Joe Kinkella, was a test pilot in the 1950s and 60s. He had lots of adventures, and most of them included airplanes. This story, in his own words, is about a man, an airplane, and a whole bunch of flying fish. But first, like, subscribe, and enjoy.
I went fishing with somebody, and I'm not much of a fisherman, but they talked me into going. Like Ace Evers. Ace loved to fish. So we were out there, and they got out there, and they didn't have any live bait. I said, why? And they said, well, it's really undependable. You know, these people that say they're going to be here, and they haul a truck down from someplace up in Utah, and they give us what they can, and sometimes we order 1,000 dozen, and they'll give us 100 dozen, you know, stuff like that. So I said, well, how much do you need? And I got to talking to the various places, and they all had airports pretty close, like Temple Bar, the Vegas Landing, Boulder City, Bullhead had the little dirt airport, Havasu, all that stuff. So anyway, I went and visited them. They said, oh yeah, we'll buy your fish. Yeah, oh absolutely. And so I think I was bait. Yeah, 4-inch average minnows. So I think I was paying a nickel a dozen in Merced and selling it for 25 cents a dozen at the place. But see, you had to haul it and get it down there, and the labor and everything. Now the problem was keeping this bait alive, because number one, I could haul 100 gallons of water in aluminum tanks in this airplane, which is really a little bit too much, but it worked out. So anyway, I would load up at Merced, and to get started, and I recruited Bob, who had just come back from Japan. I said, come on, help me out on this. Oh God, he still screams and cusses about that. So we go up there. Oh, the problem was that you had to get oxygen to them. Yeah. Now, how do you get oxygen to a bunch of fish? Well, all right, you got 100 gallons of water. To make it worthwhile, you have to haul 1,000 dozen fish in a 100 gallons. You put your hand down, it's solid fish, but they got to breathe. Well, that was a problem. I originally come up with an idea that wasn't very practical. I had a boost pump out of a B-17, which would transfer pump. I used B-17 lines for fuel lines between the tanks. I had 4 tanks, 4 25-gallon tanks. I had the water flowing between the tanks through this boost pump. Well, I put a standpipe on these lines that would serve as a venturi, and see, it would suck the air down as you put a neck in there, reduce the pressure, and it worked great out of the airplane. And in the airplane it worked great. And boy, and it would foam that water, and it just really worked. So Bob and I took it up to Merced, loaded up, and headed back. 1,000 dozen minnows. Well, first of all, coming over just south of Mount Whitney, which is pretty high through there, and this poor old thing was just barely in the air. He says, can't we go a little bit higher? And I said, Bob, this is as high as this thing will go. And so he'd been flying B-26s. He wasn't flying a kite like this. So anyway, we got over, and the wind, we had a pretty good tailwind. The wind was from the west, blowing us along, and when we got up to over the mountain, the wind went like this, and then there was a big valley atop just south of Mount Whitney. We sunk into this valley because the wind come over and a big downdraft on the other side, and we were in this valley. And so obviously we're not going to make it over the next, because we had sunk down And the next ridge was higher than we were. And I'm looking up at the ridge, and Bob said, okay, now what are you going to do? So I said, well, we're going to circle a while. And it was big enough that we could turn. Well, every time we'd approach the western edge, we'd start sinking again. Approach the eastern edge, a little bit of an updraft, so we would get a little lift and we'd get up. So went around about 10 times, but I'd stay away from the west side. And finally, we got up where we could see over the top of the western, the eastern edge. And Bob and everyone's probably reach over and push on the throttles. They'd been wide open since takeoff. And so, anyway, we made it just over the treetops. Pretty soon, we're putting along. Everything's great. We're nice and cool. Flying, it dropped down to about 8,000. I'm sitting there, fat, dumb, and happy, looking at the map. And yeah, boy, this is really working. I think we'll go a little bit further south next time, not so high through there. And I'm thinking, see, and all of a sudden, tap, tap, tap. And I, what? He said, look, minnows were all jumping out of the water. Why? It just looked like a rainstorm back there. They were run out of oxygen, run out of air. And what had happened was one of the screens had failed, and it was sucking fish through. So then we turned the pump off, and he said, what are we going to do now? And it's just raining fish in there. God, they're just jumping all over the place. And I said, well, looks like we'll have to disconnect the hoses. And we had some kind of a valve on each one that we could separate the tanks. Turn those off, pull the hoses off, stick the hose end out the window, and we'll go from tank to tank. Yeah. With blowing air. And he said, oh God, all right, we'll try it. Well, yeah, it worked, but not completely. But
a lot of dead fish.
And so we get to Temple Bar, and the signal was I'd fly over it, out over the lake, come back, and the guy'd get in his pickup and come up. He'd have the 50-gallon drums filled with water, told him what time, the whole bit, and we were right on schedule, maybe 10 minutes late. Flew over, and hell, the pickup was sitting there, no barrels in it or anything.
Why?
He forgot it.
He forgot it?
He flew over, we flew over, and pretty soon the second passenger goes, oh, hi, and walked back in. Waved, forgot that was us with his fish. God.
Very bright.
So I landed, we had to land, and so I said, okay, Bob, and what is it, a mile and a half down there, something like that? I said, I'll go down, I'll run down there, you keep the fish alive, blow on. So anyway, I finally get down there, and I said, and I'm out of breath, I've run all the way down.
Yeah.
He said, oh, damn, was that today? And I said, my God, we've got all these fish up there, and they're dying.
Yeah.
What in the... he said, I flew over, and
Yeah.
He said, oh, hell, I guess I forgot. Okay, we'll get the barrels in and get them full of water. Anyway, we did. And I get back up there, and there's a body laying under the airplane in the shade.
Passed out.
He's passed out.
Yeah, because he hyperventilated.
He was really blowing
Yeah.
fish.
Yeah, he had to.
Oh, that's hysterical.
So
Covered with dead minnows.
we got them transferred over. Now, I made quite a few other loads and made some pretty good money. So I sold the airplane. It was quite a while later, and I was in a state airplane down in Tucson, and I recognized the number, and boy, they had it all painted up beautiful and real nice. And so anyway, the pilot was there getting it ready to go someplace when I taxied up the state airplane. And I said, hey, I used to own that airplane, a couple of years ago or whenever it was. And he said, really? And I said, how is it? And he said, oh, it's a good flying airplane. He said, it's one of the better of the old we called them bamboo bombers. They're wooden fabric.
Yeah.
And so I said, yeah. And he said, except there's one little problem that we've got. And we've never been able to figure it out. He said, in hot weather, when you're taxiing out with the door closed, he said, the smell is terrible in this airplane.
Did you tell him?
No.
No.
I said, really? He said, yeah. He said, only in hot weather, though, when they close the airplane up.
It's the ghost of those fish coming back.
Well, they went all down through the floorboards.
So tell me, were you expecting that ending? Let me know in the comments. This is the test pilot's daughter saying, until next time, over and out.